communication skills is honestly my favorite topic. क्योंकि मेरे हिसाब से ना अगर कोई एक चीज है जिससे दुनिया घूमती है, that is communication skills. Everything is about communication. And I sincerely feel that, it's also such a vast subject. So today we're going to talk about 4 or 5 tools of communication. How you can get better at communication, right? Basically, आपके दिमाग में या आपके मन में जो भी है, आप ऐसे ट्रांसफर करो कि जो आपके सामने है, whether it is one person or it is 50 people. आप प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे हो, रूम में 50 लोग बैठे हैं या फिर 15 लोग बैठे हैं, जो भी आपके सामने एक पर्सन है या 15 पीपल है, उनको क्लियरली समझ में आना चाहिए आप क्या बोल रहे हो. Right. So whatever you want to speak, whatever is in your head, exactly वही transfer होना चाहिए. There should be no misunderstanding at all. And that really is communication. Your voice is critical to express yourself as well, right? कुछ लोगों की आवाज इतना कुछ कह जाती है, when they are angry the voice is different, when they are happy the voice is different, and they know how to modulate the voice. ऐसा नहीं है वो natural है, they know how to modulate. A lot of actors are very good at this. I admire people like Pankaj Tripathi, for example. कहाँ पे पॉज करना है, कहाँ पे कितना ऊंचा बोलना है, कितना धीरे बोलना है, कैसे बोलना है. So voice is another great way of communicate. It's a tool to communicate yourself. So in this session today, I'm going to tell you 4 or 5 of these tools, and I'm going to tell you something new about these tools, because communication skills is such a vast subject. It's a lifelong learning. ऐसा नहीं है कि आपने आज एक मास्टर क्लास करी, कल कोई एक कोर्स किया और फिर कुछ और किया और आपने सीख लिया कम्युनिकेशन के बारे में. इट्स अ लाइफ लॉन्ग थिंग. यू विल कीप, आप जितना उसको प्रैक्टिस करेंगे इन टूल्स को, उतना आप बेटर होते जाएंगे. टुडे ऑन माय यूट्यूब चैनल मेरे बहुत कमेंट्स आते हैं दैट यू स्पीक रियली वेल. एंड मैं ये सोचती हूँ कि मैं तो अभी भी सीख रही हूँ. I'm still learning how to communicate better and better with people. When I'm giving a workshop and I'm standing in front of people and speaking, I am still learning. From every workshop, I learn कि इसको मैं और better कैसे बोल सकती थी. And the best part is when my workshop is over, I go back and I make notes कि ये वाला point को मैं expand कर सकती थी, ये वाले point को मैं ऐसे better explain कर सकती थी, right? So I also keep learning. So I teach communication skills, but I also keep learning because it's a lifelong activity. Learning communication is a lifelong activity. ये हमें लगता है कि आप जब बहुत पैशनेट हैं किसी प्रोडक्ट के बारे में, तभी आप बहुत अच्छे से बोल पाएंगे. बट यू नो व्हाट, यू कैन ऑल्सो ट्रेन योरसेल्फ. क्योंकि जरूरी नहीं. अब आप एक बात बताओ, इफ यू आर सेलिंग ऑयल, हाँ, मेरे हस्बैंड कैस्ट्रॉल में काम करते होते थे. इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू बी पैशनेट अबाउट इंजन ऑयल, है ना. आप इंजन ऑयल के लिए कैसे पैशनेट हो सकते हैं? आपकी लाइफ में इंजन ऑयल, मतलब व्हाट इज इंजन ऑयल डूइंग इन योर लाइफ, राइट? But he would speak very passionately about engine oil because he was passionate about the product, about his role, sales. But I think also he had trained himself. He had trained himself कि when I'm with somebody, I will bring passion. I will bring passion to that situation. I will bring a lot of for my own product. I will bring knowledge, and that will reflect. Similarly, I love my job. I enter into rooms pretty much twice or thrice a week. कई बार senior leaders होते हैं, banks के senior leaders होते हैं, and I also feel nervous. I may be a trainer, लेकिन I walk into a room and I see all these very senior people and I feel very nervous, and मुझे भी लगता है कि मतलब I have to convince these people to listen to me. क्योंकि behavioral skills का क्या ना, आप रूम में एंटर करते हो, लोग ऐसे अभी और क्या सीख सकते हैं और क्या है सीखने को. तो आधे लोग तो वर्कशॉप में ऐसे बैठे होते हैं, स्पेशली कॉर्पोरेट वर्कशॉप, जब HR has forced people to sit in the room, and then I have to get them to listen to me. I have to get them to agree with me. It is not just passion, it is also about training myself. So I train my body to look confident, otherwise I will feel I will collapse, I will look nervous. So I trained my body कि मैं किसी भी workshop में enter करूंगी, I will look confident, and then I will be able to take it on. So communication skills is also about training that you give yourself. So yes, you're absolutely right. Passion is very important. So the passion that you feel for your product and your role and your job will show, but you should also train yourself. You should get so good that you should know exactly how to modulate your voice. That is an art, right? If I'm on stage, it is not just passion. It is my understanding of communication skills and how I can modulate at what point so that the audience is with me. That is also important. So training is as important as passion. So the first thing I want to talk about, the first tool I want to talk about is the most misunderstood tool, language, right? Language सबसे ज्यादा important है, लेकिन language सबसे ज्यादा misunderstood है, right? So I'm going to ask you a question. I don't know how many of you have really thought about this, right? Give yourself some time to think about the answer. So my question to you is, and this is a question my husband had once asked me, what is the language that you think in? आप कौन से लैंग्वेज में सोचते हो? What is the language where आपके पास कोई आइडिया है, आप मीटिंग में बैठे हो, आपके पास कोई आइडिया आया, आप उस आइडिया को अपने दिमाग में सोच रहे हो, रिफाइन कर रहे हो, या फिर आपको कुछ बोलना है, या फिर कोई आर्ग्यूमेंट है, या फिर कुछ भी नया आप सोच रहे हो, तो कौन सी लैंग्वेज में आप सोचते हो? इन योर हेड, व्हाट इज द लैंग्वेज दैट यू थिंक इन? And that is also the language that you automatically speak in most articulately when you're under stress. When you're under stress, जब आप स्ट्रेस में होते हैं ना, तो जब आपको मन से कोई बात किसी को समझानी होती है, ऑटोमेटिकली आप उस लैंग्वेज में बात करते हो. खाली जब हमको प्रेजेंटेशन देनी होती है, हम शायद इंग्लिश में करते हो, लेकिन आप कौन से लैंग्वेज में सोचते हो, दैट इज वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. And it's very important to be aware of this. Very, very important to be aware of this. And I'll tell you why. क्योंकि जब हम जिस लैंग्वेज में सोचते हैं, उसी लैंग्वेज में जब हम बोलते भी हैं, तो हम बहुत अच्छी तरह से अपने आप को समझा सकते हैं. Agree? Everybody agrees with that. When you're thinking in one language and you also speak in that language, you are able to explain yourself really well because there is no translation happening in your head, right? You know the words, so it's very easy to explain yourself in that language because it is the language that you're thinking in. It could be your mother tongue, or it could be a language that you've grown up with. So I'll tell you, I think in English, right? Because when I was growing up, my parents were posted in smaller towns. My father used to work for a PSU, and we were posted in smaller towns where most of the schools, so a convent hota tha, and then there used to be local schools. And so IOC, I was in Indian Oil. My dad was in Indian Oil, and Indian Oil always had a tie-up with the convents of the the smaller towns. And I always been in convents. Convents mein kya hota na, you start thinking in English because there's so much force on, you have to speak in English, speak in English, speak in English. Automatically aap sochna bhi English mein shuru karte ho, which is a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but that is how it is. That is how I grew up. So when I speak, I automatically now think in English. If somebody asks me to speak in Hindi, it takes me a pause. Sometimes, it takes me a pause. But it is my mother tongue. Hindi is also my mother tongue, so it's easy. But I still think in English, and it becomes easier for me to speak in English, right? Similarly, why I'm saying this to you is that sometimes it's a tool. It's a tool for better explaining yourself. So sometimes, if you're in a room, or if you're in front of a client, or if you're in front of your boss, and both of you speak in that language, which could be Hindi, or which could be Kannada, or it could be, any regional language, you don't necessarily have to speak in a acceptable language, which in our country now is English. So you don't necessarily, if you want to really express yourself, it is sometimes okay to lapse into your language that you think in, provided other people in the room understand that language. I'm saying this repeatedly because I am now seeing, as a communication skills trainer, I am seeing that there is a lot of stress on speaking in English. And I understand that because it's an international language. So, understanding, working with teams that are international. And one of the reasons why India has been progressing so much and doing so much is because of our English speaking capability, right? We can interact with international teams, we can sell product internationally, we can work seamlessly across countries. It is a huge benefit, right? But when you're interacting with smaller, very smaller subsets of people, it could be a client who's, and most of us do this, most of us lapse into this. But even when you're giving a presentation apni company mein, it's okay to do like a little mix of English and the language that you think in. It's important to do that because it just helps you to explain yourself better, right? तो इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है इसमें. आई हैव क्लाइंट्स, जब मैं ये प्रेजेंटेशन स्किल्स वर्कशॉप्स करती हूँ बैंक्स वगैरह में, तो लॉट ऑफ पीपल से बट हाउ मैं प्रेजेंटेशन दे रही हूँ या दे रहा हूँ एंड आई कांट सडनली स्टार्ट स्पीकिंग इन हिंदी एंड आई एम लाइक बट इट्स एक्सेप्टेबल इन अ लोकल सेटिंग. इट्स परफेक्टली एक्सेप्टेबल. You don't have to feel judged because you don't know English. A lot of people have this thing in their heads that I'm feeling judged because I don't know English so well. Perfectly okay. I don't think it matters at all anymore. What matters is your knowledge, and what matters is how well you're able to express yourself, right? So why it is important, why I brought this up was that everything is about communicating yourself well, particularly clients ko, particularly teams ko, दूसरी टीम्स को. when you're giving a presentation, आप प्रेजेंटेशन दे रहे हो और एक बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट चीज आप समझाने की कोशिश कर रहे हो, but if you're struggling with the language, the outcome will not be there. आपको बजट चाहिए किसी चीज के लिए और आप एक्सप्लेन करने की कोशिश करो कि ये बजट बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है इस टीम के लिए बिकॉज हमें ये न्यू सर्विस चाहिए या ये न्यू प्रोडक्ट चाहिए या ये न्यू सॉफ्टवेयर चाहिए. लेकिन you're not being able to convince your teams because you're lacking that language. That is very, very, it is not so good, right? So it's okay to switch as long as you're able to explain yourself well, because I don't want you to feel judged. The worst thing is to prevent yourself from communicating what you want to communicate because you're feeling judged. I'll tell you a little story at this point. I have lots of stories, so I'll tell you a story just to help you understand this. I was 13 years old, और मैं ये story सबको सुनाती हूँ क्योंकि I have learned so much from this. I was 13 years old when I was selected for my first debate. मेरी जो house warden थी स्कूल में दिल्ली में, वो मेरी इंग्लिश टीचर भी थी और उन्होंने कहा कि ये अच्छा बोलती है, कॉन्वेंट एजुकेशन, ये अच्छा बोलती है, सो आई विल सिलेक्ट हर फॉर एन इंटर हाउस डिबेट. शी सिलेक्टेड मी, शी ट्रेन्ड मी. आई स्टिल रिमेंबर मेरा टॉपिक क्या था. मेरा टॉपिक था इट्स बेटर टू बी अ जैक ऑफ ऑल ट्रेड्स देन अ मास्टर ऑफ नन. हाँ, मैंने कुछ सुनील गावस्कर का एग्जाम्पल भी दिया था. एनीवे, तो हमने वो 3 मिनट का डिबेट लिखा, फिर मैंने बहुत प्रैक्टिस किया उसे एंड मिसेस गोस्वामी और मैंने उसको बिल्कुल परफेक्ट किया. तो मैं रोज आफ्टर स्कूल आवर्स आई यूज्ड टू स्टे मिसेस गोस्वामी के साथ और हम लोग वो प्रैक्टिस करते थे एंड वेरी गुड, आई हैड बिकम वेरी वेरी गुड एट इट. सो मिसेस गोस्वामी ने कहा कि आप अब ना एक ट्रायल रन करते हैं. सो वील कॉल द क्लास, वील कॉल द एंटायर क्लास और ऑडिटोरियम में जहाँ एक्चुअल डिबेट होगा वहां पे एक प्रैक्टिस रन करते हैं. तो उन्होंने पूरी क्लास को बुलाया, 50 बच्चे, क्योंकि मेरे स्कूल में बहुत बच्चे थे. आई एम फ्रॉम डीपीएस आरकेपुरम इन दिल्ली, व्हिच इज अ वेरी लार्ज स्कूल. सो शी कॉल्ड ऑल द 50 किड्स इन द ऑडिटोरियम एंड शी asked me to go up on stage and speak. कि दीपिका तो will crack it. दीपिका तो collapsed. I couldn't. In spite of all the practice, मुझसे नहीं हुआ. क्यों? And Mrs. गोस्वामी ने मुझे बताया क्योंकि आप you were feeling judged. आपको लग रहा था कि ये मेरे बारे में क्या सोचेंगे. ये 50 लोग मुझे जानते हैं and now in spite of practicing really hard, you were feeling very, very judged. And that is what happens when we are giving a presentation or we're speaking to people. हम अपने आप को ना दूसरे की नजर से देखने की कोशिश करते हैं and we judge ourselves before they have judged us, right? So which is why we feel we need to speak in a certain language and we need to look and talk in a certain way. ऐसा नहीं है. गोल क्या है? आपको जो एक्सप्लेन करना है, एक्सप्रेस करना है, वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है, राइट? सो ऑलवेज don't bother too much about the language, bother about getting your point across. The second tool that I really, really want you to focus on is something that, which is a buzzword now, लेकिन I want you to really work on it, is storytelling. हम इतना सुनते हैं कि स्टोरी टेलिंग आजकल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है, स्टोरी टेलिंग करो, स्टोरी टेलिंग से लोग आपको याद रखेंगे, what do I mean? कि suppose आप एक client से मिल रहे हो, ठीक है? You have a meeting with a client now, and you have a half an hour meeting. Let's say it's a new client, right? It's a new client. You have to go meet this new client, or let's say it's an old client also, whatever. आपका half an hour का meeting है, आप तैयार होके गए हो. Now, what is storytelling, and how will you use storytelling in that 30 minutes? किस किस्म की stories? What is storytelling? What? Tell me the execution. Of course, you will build trust with storytelling. And of course, you will become relatable, you will become memorable. लेकिन आप करोगे कैसे वो storytelling? So basically, it is either stories from your personal life, which will help connect with people, or it is stories of the product, right? So there could be a behind the scenes story that you have. There could be some other, किसी और client की कोई story होगी, which will help you, sell the product. उन्होंने ये प्रोडक्ट खरीदा और क्या हुआ, एटसेट्रा एटसेट्रा, राइट? स्टोरीज हेल्प यू टू अंडरस्टैंड बेटर. सो स्टोरीज in my head, there are 3 kinds of stories, right? One is stories from your life, your personal life, right? So when you meet people for the first time, or when you meet people repeatedly, stories from your life, particularly that are relevant to the other person, also help you to form a bond, yeah, and help them to understand you, right? So that's very, very important. The other is stories of the product, right? Stories of your product, right? Or stories of other clients that will help your client to understand situations where they could be in the same situation, and the product will help. So for that, you need to really understand the client and the journey of the client. So client agar decide nahi kar pa raha hai to buy your product, can you think of a story of another client where they bought the product and what happened to them, right? So immediately you have to connect the dots. The third kind of storytelling, and that is the most, according to me, it is the most important as far as communication skills is concerned, is the way you speak, you know. So narrating a story or communicating with people also has to be like a story, right? So when you're giving a presentation, when you're giving, or you're giving a presentation to a client, or you're talking about your product to a client, right? How you explain your new product, or how that 30 minutes, how you decide, how you're going to talk, right? That narration, and the narration also of the story that you're narrating, is very important, right? There should be a beginning, there should be a middle, there should be an end, and you should know exactly how much time your story should take, because your story will lose all impact if you talk too much. By then people have either lost interest, or you've lost the punch of the story. So these are the 3 kinds of stories that are very, very important. And when I say the first one, stories from your personal life, it could also be stories that you've heard, for example. So I'll give you an example. My husband and I like road trips. We like driving, and we take a lot of road trips. And this was many years ago. When he was with Castrol. Every time we would take a road trip, he would ask me to note down numbers of trucks, right? Because prospective client. So he would tell me, Dipika, there's a truck, note down the number. Now, after a point, this was a time when, there were no smartphones. I said, I can't take a photo of the number. I had to actually note down the number. And so every time we came to a point where he didn't even have to tell me. We are on the highway, there is a truck, I will note down the number. And the next week he will go and, try to crack that client. That was the drill that we had. Now, I remember a few months later, I was just thinking about this one day, and a few months later, within 1 week, I narrated this story twice. One was at a social occasion where we were all discussing, oh my God, we do so much for our spouses. And I was like, oh my God, every road trip I would sit and take down numbers of trucks. I've done so much. Castrol also owes me some money, etc., etc. And the next, I had gone for a pitch to a company where the sales head wanted to meet me for a meeting where I was supposed to train sales teams, right, on storytelling and pitching and communication, etc. And we were talking about what is going to be the structure of the workshop, what will I actually do, and what will be the pricing, typical stuff, typical product related, pricing related stuff. And then I told him this story. I said, and he also, his brief to me was that my sales team is very dull right now. I don't know why. So then I told him this story. I said, my husband was so passionate about sales that he involved me also on a holiday. We are going on a holiday and he's telling me, Dipika, please note down all the trucks ke numbers. And on a highway, imagine how many trucks you see. Especially Jaipur, Delhi, Jaipur, you see so many of these. Anywhere in Rajasthan, you'll see so many of these trucks. Constantly I'm taking down. So I was telling him, he was so passionate. He would ask me to note down the numbers. In the next week, he would go and, call them up and try to crack them. And the sales head said, yes, this, Dipika, I want my team to have this same kind of passion. And I got the project. Uske baad, after I told him this story, I did not have to talk about what my workshop is going to be, what my pricing is going, nothing. He understood that I understood his problem. Just with this story, he understood that I understood his problem. And now that I have the problem, I will figure out the solution. He doesn't have to tell me. I don't have to tell him ki ye 3 sections honge workshop ke, one day we will do this one. He's like, you've got it. I said, yes, I've got it. I know exactly what you're talking about. That one story got me that project, right? Now also passion sealed it, and also the fact that I understood passion, my husband's passion for sales also sealed it. So, for me, I see my husband as a role model as far as sales is concerned. He started life selling paints in a city, in a small area. And today he heads PMS, mutual funds, for a very, very boutique, it's a very good fund. But I have seen the growth. And the one thing that I have seen in his growth has been storytelling. Constant storytelling about other industries, storytelling about people, storytelling about, so for example, a few months back, he was listening to Mahabharat, a podcast. He listens to a lot of podcasts. He gathers a lot of things that he can make stories out of, which is what you should also do. You should, listen to a lot of things. You should gather a lot of information, because stories will come from there. So he's been listening to Mahabharat, and Mahabharat, there's so much to learn. I mean, it's amazing how much you can learn from that epic. And he uses that when he meets new clients. He meets a lot of HNI clients who made a lot of money, SME clients, running big manufacturing companies. And he uses learnings from Mahabharat. He translates it into business, and then he'll have a conversation about, something that he's learned from Mahabharat, which can be applied to business. What amazing stories is that? He's perfected the art of storytelling. किसी भी industry के बारे में, किसी भी चीज के बारे में, he will always have a story to tell you. Any person, anywhere. You should perfect. People love listening to stories, and stories help you to connect immediately. Bachpan mein, how many of you used to like listening to stories? I used to love it. Every time I would go to my nanny's house, it was like she had to tell me 2 stories. So I'm not going to go to sleep, right? So raat ko, those 2 stories I have to listen to. We love listening to stories, right? So conversations should really be about stories, and you should always have a data bank of stories with you. Kahin bhi, kisi bhi situation mein, you'll have a story. I have a data bank of stories now. Every workshop, I will bring up the Castrol story. Every workshop, in some other workshop, I will bring up some other story. I have a data bank of stories. And it's not hard. It's not hard to find stories from your life. You should just know what story is going to fit where and will get you your outcome. You have to perfect that art. Ki this story, this Castrol story can actually do this. So, एक seamless दिमाग में आपके ना एक seamless bridge बन जाना चाहिए between the story and the outcome that the story will get for you, right? You should become a master storyteller. And when you become that, so every workshop I do, every point, I will have a story. Whether I've used it, I've not used it, किसी भी point पे I will be able to tell you a story, and that will explain it to you better. Similarly, when you go to a sales, when you're doing a sales call or you're doing a lead generation, if you talk stories. So yesterday I got a message on my Instagram from a girl. I do a lot of Instagram lives, essay lives karti hu main. And she used to pop in and listen to those lives, and she's a young girl. And yesterday I got a message from her saying that, Dipika, you had once taught us that when an interviewer asks you what are your achievements in your previous role, don't say this. Tell them a story which talks about that achievement, right? Highlight. Story क्या होती है? Story में एक problem होता है, एक hero होता है और एक solution होता है. हर स्टोरी में यही होता है, राइट? टाइगर में भी एक प्रॉब्लम है, सलमान खान एक हीरो है और एक सोल्यूशन उसने फाइंड आउट किया, राइट? एवरी स्टोरी विल हैव द सेम, देयर इज अ चैलेंज, देयर इज अ हीरो, एंड देन देयर इज अ सोल्यूशन. यू आर द हीरो इन मोस्ट केसेस, राइट? So she said, I told them, I always tell people ki achievement mat bolo. Acha, I was able to take numbers from so and so. Tell them a story. This was the challenge that we were facing, and then this is the solution that I found, and the company was able to do this. This was the outcome, right? Solution. So she wrote to me saying that my achievement, two achievements, I told them two stories, right? And then it became a conversation. And when she was leaving the interview, the interviewer, her hone wali boss, said that I really enjoyed this conversation with you. That is what should happen. When you go to make a sales call, you don't go to sell. You go to have a good conversation. If the person likes you, if the conversation is good, either the person will buy your product or the person will recommend you to somebody who needs the product. And that should be your outcome. Your outcome is not कि जाते ही मैंने बेचना. I know टारगेट तो सबके सर पे ऐसे मन रहता है, ऐसा नहीं है कि नहीं मन रहता है. But in the long term, the network that you will build and the people who will be recommending you and the people who will buy from you are people who really genuinely like you and like spending time with you, right? And again, the example of my husband, his network is very solid because he's built those connections. It's very important. People move on from industries and then they don't even remember people that they used to talk to in previous industries. He's moved industries. He was in product, now he's in service, financial services. But the product guys will still remember. So every time he'll go back to Delhi, he will still meet some one or two distributors of Castrol or Berger Paints, which is where he started his career. And today, couple of distributors of his Castrol are now his clients at the mutual fund, at the PMS fund that he's running, because of the connections. So when you go to meet a client, stories, tell stories, connect with that person, and remember how to pull out those stories so that they are relevant at that particular time, right? Either to explain a problem or to build a connection. Stories can do so much. So that is my second tip. Keep practice, practice, practice. Always have a data bank of stories. Talk in stories with people. That will really help you, right? Third point. Third point is something that again no one will no one will we no when we talk about communication skills, we don't really talk about this so much. But to me, body language is, I think, even more important than what I'm saying. And there is a Meherbia principle. Ek research hua tha. Meherbia was a guy, was a researcher. He'd done this research, which said that when you're speaking to people, only 7% of the impact is through your words. Only 7%. The rest is all your body language and your voice, right? Voice modulation and etc. etc. But only 7% is words. Imagine. And when you think about it, it is 738, exactly 738 and 55. 38, I think, is voice and 55 is body language. Yes, 55 is body language. That's Meherbia's principle. So I find it so fascinating, which is why, जब हम ये virtual meetings करते हैं ना, we had so much problem because when we're sitting in front of people, we make up our minds a lot based on, do we really like them? It's not so much about the words. Now, I can be sitting here and I can say, yes, I'll do it for you. But if my body language and my voice is not convincing, you will not believe me, right? So according to me, body language is very important. In sales particularly, it is so, you walk into a room, client ke liye, milne ke liye, you walk in to give a presentation, when you meet people at a networking conference or LIC agents, for example, you've gone to meet all of these LIC agents and now you have to teach them something, you have to tell them something. Your body language speaks before you've actually spoken, right? So you have to work on your body language. Ek TED talk hai by Amy Cuddy. I would love for you to watch it later. Amy Cuddy is, she talks about power posing, but basically what she says, I think one of the most viewed TED talks hai on YouTube. One of the most viewed, I think 25 million views या ऐसा कुछ है. वो कहती है कि body language जो है ना, वो natural पे तो depend करो ही मत. train your body. Or this is what I was saying earlier also. When I walk into a room and the senior leaders of a large company, I will do that. Senior leaders of a large company sitting there, I could be very nervous. I am always very nervous, because abhi unko I have to teach them, and then they have to agree to what I'm saying. They have to agree to learning from me. It's very tough. Now, if I walk in looking nervous, I have lost the battle. I've lost it. They are not going to listen to me, right? They're not. As it is, they're like skeptical. Or kya hai seekhne ko? These senior people, 25 years of experience, 26 years of experience, 30 years of experience. And what am I going to teach them about communication skills? Several of them come and tell me, oh, but I'm making so much revenue for my company. What more do I need to learn? Some of them come in with that attitude. Now, if I look nervous, I have lost the battle. They are not going to listen to me at all, right? But I'm feeling nervous. So how do I do it? I train my body. I'm like, I don't care however nervous I'm. And when you're nervous now, your body goes back to its natural form. Unless and until you train it so much ki kuch bhi ho jaye, I will be standing tall. And that requires practice. It doesn't come in a day. It doesn't come in 2 days, right? You have to keep training your body language to look open, to look smart, to look confident, to walk in like a person people want to listen to and people want to buy from. That charisma is half the battle won. Is really half the battle won. And many of us don't understand that because we don't mindfully work on our body language. So simple things, when you're giving a presentation, आप लोगों के सामने बोल रहे हैं, stakeholders के सामने, team के सामने, client, 5 client है उनके सामने आप presentation दे रहे हैं. एक simple tip which Amy Cuddy also talks about is that if you stand with your feet directly underneath your shoulders, राइट हम कैसे खड़े होते हैं ना, एक पैर आगे एक पैर पीछे या फिर एक पैर कहीं और. अगर आपके दोनों पैर बिल्कुल शोल्डर्स के नीचे with your weight distributed equally on both your feet, and even when you're sitting for an important meeting, like when I'm sitting for this virtual, I'm sitting like that, with my feet on the ground, both my feet on the ground, weight completely on both my feet, equally on both my, it's a very grounding, very powerful position. Automatically, you will feel you will not sway side to side. You will not ek pair idhar, ek pair. If you just stand like that with your shoulders piche and your stomach tucked in, and when you sit like that also, you just feel more powerful. If you just work on it, ki kuch bhi ho jaye. For me, when I walk into a workshop, kuch bhi ho jaye, I will stand like that in front of these diggaj log, senior leaders of some bank somewhere. I will stand like that, then it's like, you'd better listen to me, so even before I've spoken, I can be very articulate. And for me, I am the presentation. I don't even keep like a presentation because I want you to follow the way I communicate. I'm articulate. I will use stories. I become the presentation. In fact, a lot of people have told me that if I can stand the way you are standing while giving a presentation, for me, that is success. Why? Because I've trained myself to do it. So train your body language to look confident and look smart all the time. And if you're not mindful about it, then your body will collapse into its natural form. Now you will, sit like this in front of a client. You will sink back into, So when you're feeling comfortable, it is okay to do this also. But according to me, this, can you see the difference? Even when you're sitting in front of a client, you can do this and you can talk to them like this, right? Or you can do this and you can talk to them like this. This automatically just feels more, it inspires more confidence. It's as simple as that. It just inspires more confidence. So body language, एक बहुत ही अच्छा YouTube channel. It's amazing. And yesterday I was watching this podcast, Nikhil Kamath ka podcast I was watching, where Ranveer Alabadi, I don't know how many of you follow Ranveer Alabadi. He also mentioned the YouTube channel. I have been following it for many, many years now. It's called Charisma on Command, not Beer Biceps. Beer Biceps spoke about this channel and I also watched this channel. It's called Charisma on Command. If you get a chance, in fact, you should go look it up. So what this channel does is it teaches you non-verbal communication beautifully. छोटी छोटी चीजें, आप कब ह्यूमर यूज कर सकते हो, कैसे आप इंस्पायर कर सकते हो ट्रस्ट, आपके एक्सप्रेशंस के बारे में, हाउ यू शुड सिट, how you should address people. It's a beautiful video channel, Charisma on Command. Spend a little bit of time once in a while, find topics that you like, and I assure you, you will learn. I have learned beautiful things from Charisma on Command. मैंने recently एक हाई स्टेटस करके एक कॉन्सेप्ट है, उसके बारे में करिश्मा ऑन कमांड से सीखा है. हाई स्टेटस हैज नथिंग टू डू विद योर position, money. It's the way you treat life. I am high status mentally, you know, nothing will affect me, nothing negative will affect me. I will treat everything with curiosity. It's a beautiful concept. So charisma on command, आप देखो उसमें बहुत कुछ body language के बारे में, taking up space के बारे में है, and work mindfully on your body language so that you inspire confidence. When you walk into a room, people want to talk to you, people want to get to know you better, people want to buy your product. Ultimately, that is our goal, right? People want to buy your product, but in the long term, people want to connect with you. That should be your bigger objective than selling the product right now. Lamba game. Sales is always a long game. You know, you build connections, the connections will buy from you 5 years later. But the building connections is so important, right? So that is my third or fourth point, which is about body language. You know, you just inspire more confidence when you have good body language, and it makes you also feel very confident. So, you know, the minute you're straight, tall, smiling, open face, you just feel more confident about the situation. And then you react to the situation also very confidently. You train your body, everything is going to be fine. When your body thinks everything is going to be fine, your mind also thinks everything is going to be fine, right? It's a connection, which is what Amy Cuddy speaks about. So the minute you sit like this, you can handle anything, right? So that is body language. The last thing I want to talk about is also a part of the Meherban principle, which is your voice. Again, like body language, we are not very mindful about our voice. We speak the way we speak. Your voice can be trained. I don't think I started live speaking like this. Your voice can be trained. And voice is not just about your voice. It's also about your pitch, your modulation, your tone, your pauses, where you pause. Pausing is so important. You know, we hate pauses. We hate silence. हाँ, आप बात कर रहे हो, कोई और भी बात कर रहा है, एकदम से साइलेंस आया ना, वी वांट टू रश इनटू दैट साइलेंस. साइलेंस हमें पसंद ही नहीं है. आपने अपना प्राइस कोट किया किसी प्रोडक्ट के बारे में, आपने बोला कि दिस इज द प्राइस दैट वी आर ऑफरिंग राइट नाउ. अगर वो कुछ नहीं बोलेगा ना सामने से, तो हम ऑटोमेटिकली उसमें उस साइलेंस में घुसने की कोशिश करेंगे. बट इफ यू पॉज, यू जस्ट let people think, and you also look like you're not going to be discounting very fast. You're okay and you're happy with your price. So your voice, you can work on. You can work on the modulation. You can work on how fast or how slow you speak. Always better to speak slightly slowly. You know, the tempo should be slightly slow. People just absorb what you're saying better. Now, if I were to speak really, really fast, it would become very difficult for you to sort of, absorb what I'm saying. But if I pause, if I speak like this, there is just more drama and you just understand better, right? So very, very important to be mindful of your voice and to learn to modulate it. Volume, for example, इतने बड़े रूम में एक प्रेजेंटेशन देनी है, कुछ लोग ऐसे बोलते हैं कि जो फ्रंट रो में बैठे हैं ना, उनको भी आवाज नहीं आती है. You should just estimate, if there are 5 rows of people, why would you speak in a manner where only the front 2 rows can hear you? Right? So you have to be very mindful of your voice. Again, it boils down to how confident you're feeling in that room, right? But if you're addressing, I always use this example story. If I give you, we all play cricket, कभी ना कभी तो cricket मतलब थोड़ा बहुत तो खेला ही है ना? और कुछ नहीं तो मतलब टेनिस, कुछ तो बॉल के साथ. Now, if I gave you a tennis ball and I said कि वो और आपके सामने let's say 10 feet की दूरी पे एक दीवार है, and I say कि why don't you hit the wall with this ball, you will be able to estimate how much power you will need to hit that wall. Now, if there was a wall 3 feet away from you and I told you hit that wall, again you will be able to estimate. In both cases the power required will be different, है ना? 3 feet wall पे the power will be different, the 10 feet wall the power will be different. Your voice is like that. You have to estimate till how far your voice has to carry. It's as simple as that. It's that tennis ball. If there's a large crowd and you don't have a mic, you have to use your voice to be able to reach till the last person in the room. And if there are very few people, then you don't have to shout, right? So your voice also plays a very large role. You should listen to people who speak well. You know, it's amazing to listen to people on YouTube, on podcasts. Firstly, though, it gives you so much knowledge. I think I spend now more time on listening to podcasts than I did ever before. So much to learn from good podcasts. But voice, how people use their voice is absolutely amazing. कहाँ स्ट्रेस डालना है, मतलब एक उसमें नहीं बोलना है, वो रेल पे गाड़ी चल रही है वैसे नहीं बोलना है. You have to know how to pause, where to pause, what is your volume, where do you put emphasis, how can you create the most impact when you're speaking. There is nothing more delightful than a person who can speak really well. Communication skills, and not just speak, not just your language or the way you are, how you're articulating, but everything, your voice, your ideas, your thoughts, the way you're standing, and the language that you're using. There is nothing more delightful because, like I said, communication makes the world go round. So if you communicate well, if you speak well, the world will sit up and notice you. And this is a simple thing that most of us don't understand and most of us don't like. We go through life, we perfect our domain skills, we sell our products, etc. But learning to communicate well, practicing it on a daily basis and saying that I will get 1% better every month, whether it's the way I use my voice, or it's the way I articulate, or it's the way I tell stories, trust me, you will feel yourself feeling very powerful because everything is about communication. When you speak and people listen to you, it's an amazing feeling and your job is done, right? So communication skills is not just about transferring your ideas, it is also transferring them very powerfully so that people sit up and take notice and they want to connect with you and they want to buy from you and they want to stay in touch with you. I think that's very, very important. I create content. I have a YouTube channel and I've learned this. How do you ensure that people listen to you? How do you create videos, or how do you do a workshop like this where you ensure people actually listen to you? So according to me, and you are all in sales, and you do sales really well, I'm sure you want to learn about sales, but you will realize that sales will become very easy when you work on your communication and your other behavioral skills, because sales will then become just very, very easy. Sales is all about connecting with people. And I've seen it with people, when I coach, when I do workshops, I've realized that if you mastered communication, you can master any domain. Because after a point, initially when we begin our careers, it's more about the domain skill. ठीक है, आपको सीखना होता है कि लीड जनरेशन कैसे करनी है, फॉलो अप्स कैसे करने हैं, वगैरह वगैरह. लेकिन आफ्टर अ पॉइंट इट इज ऑल, कोई कुछ भी हो, किसी भी रोल में हो, व्हाटएवर यू डू, आप आईटी में हो, आप किसी भी रोल में, सॉफ्टवेयर में हो, अल्टीमेटली इट्स अबाउट कम्युनिकेशन स्किल्स. यू विल ग्रो, देन यू विल हैव अ टीम, you will have more clients, you will have everything is about communication skills. How you're able to convince your team, how you're able to share your vision with your team, how you're able to inspire or motivate your team to do better, how you're able to rally your clients to give you that month where you're not doing too well. How do you ensure your client buys something from you so that you can touch some bit of your target? Everything is about communication skills and not so much about domain skills, which is why very, very important to be mindful and practice your communication skills. And these are the tools that you will use. So language, voice, body language, all of these are tools. And each of us is, in every tool, we are different. In body language, you may be really, really good, but you may need to work on language. So each of us is different in every tool, but we should work hard to ensure that all of it becomes really good so that you're really a powerful communicator.